Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. Baseball stadiums carry a special mystique in Americana, especially the old ones. Now, there are not many left, but to this day, there are still a handful of stadiums in operation from the early 20th century, and one of them sits on the north side of the windy city of Chicago. Built in 1914, it took over 100 years for this stadium's occupier, the Chicago Cubs, to finally win a World Series. The stadium is tucked into Chicago's north side and is universally beloved in sports as a cathedral of baseball, earning the descriptive term the friendly confines. This is the second oldest active ballpark in Major League Baseball, Wrigley Field. Completed in 1914, Wrigley was part of the new wave of concrete and steel ballparks that swept the nation in the first decades of the 20th century, which would lay the foundation, very pun intended by the way, for all sports stadiums in the next century. Now, it was originally named Weigman Park, then Cubs Park, before taking the name Wrigley Field in 1926, named after the new owner of the team at the time, chewing gum tycoon William Wrigley. The original seating capacity of the stadium was a tiny 14,000, which has grown over time to roughly 39,000 today. Now, several features make Wrigley unique. The first and most notable, perhaps, is the ivy-covered outfield wall. While it serves as a neat aspect of the park, it provides a defensive advantage, actually, as any deep ball that stays in its ivy is an automatic ground rule double. Now, at the same time, it could also be an offensive advantage, as the ivy covers a hard brick wall, making outfielders less likely to charge at full force into the wall to make a catch. Wrigley was also the first stadium to do giveaway prizes to fans, and that's a practice that most teams actually have today. And one other unique feature to the club's history is that for most of the 20th century, the stadium did not have lights, which meant the Cubs could not play night games at home. It was a charming feature of Wrigley to be sure, but eventually the stadium needed to catch up with the times. So finally, in 1988, lights were installed and nighttime baseball made it to the north side of Chicago. Now, after every game, a flag is raised, either a blue flag with a white L to signal a loss or a white flag with a blue W for a win. Sadly for Cubs fans, Wrigley Field has seen its fair share of the L flag, as the Cubs have had many tough seasons, thus earning them the nickname the Lovable Losers. But every so often, a Cubs team puts together a dramatic run, and that was none so amazing for Cubs fans as the 2016 season, where the Cubs won the NL Central and then made it to the NLCS, where at Wrigley Field, they snapped a 70-year drought and made it to their first World Series since 1945. There, they overcame a 3-1 deficit against the Cleveland Indians to win their first World Series in 108 years. Now, Wrigley remains the second oldest active ballpark in the big leagues today, behind only Fenway Park in Boston, which was built in 1912. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.